Welcome, everybody, to another edition of All In with Art Stapleton, a New York Giants podcast brought to you by NorthJersey.com and The Record. I am your host, Art Stapleton, and you can enjoy the brick of 1925 Giants Drive behind me. It is roster cut day the day after, and the Giants have their 53-man roster initial, and the waiver claims have finished up couple hours ago, so I figured today was as good a time as any to hop on here, kind of give you my thoughts, and tee up the rest of the week because we're going to have Tyler Dunn of Go Long, who did a 3-part enterprise takeout on Joe Shane and the New York Giants. Tyler knew Joe Shane, Brian Dable, and the rest of the Buffalo crew from their time with the Bills. So he got some insight on the organization. He was here for a couple days in the summer, and I think you'll find a lot of the stuff interesting. So Tyler and I will go back and forth, hopefully tomorrow, and we'll try to get that podcast out to you as soon as possible. But first, it is about 93 degrees out here in North Jersey. I'm here in East Rutherford, and I apologize for the air conditioning in the background. It's actually the refrigerated units that the Giants use for their cafeteria, I believe. So I have no access to that, or else I'd be sitting here with some good Giants food. But not. I am here with water and doing the best I can to survive. Now we're back in August heat, whereas we were spoiled the last week or so. And it was cool and kind of felt like fall was coming. All right, so the 53-man roster. Let's start with the biggest news from yesterday, I think, was twofold. Number one, Brian Dable joked about it, but it really wasn't a joke. For the first time all summer, the starting offensive line was together intact for the walkthrough in the morning and then for the light practice they had in the afternoon. Andrew Thomas at left tackle, John Runyon back at left guard. At center is John Michael Schmitz. At right guard is Greg Van Roten. And at right tackle is Jermaine Illuminor. You can check out my post on NorthJersey.com about the new starters for the Giants this year. By my count, it's 11 new starters. And I ranked them for you, 11-1. And teaser, Jermaine Illuminor is a lot higher on the list than maybe you would actually think, because I think by replacement value of what the Giants had at right tackle the last 2 years, I think Illuminor will bring a steadiness. Reminds me a lot of when Kareem McKenzie came here. Nothing flashy. No one looked at Kareem McKenzie and said, oh, he's a high-priced, high-profile free agent. But Jermaine Illuminor will come, and if he can stay healthy, I think he will do wonders for the opposite end, the bookend, if you will, for Andrew Thomas. So that was number one. Brian Dable joked about taking a picture of the first-team offensive line because they hadn't seen them together, so to kind of commemorate the moment. But I think it was kind of tongue-in-cheek, but not really. But the Giants don't believe that it's a continuity problem with the offensive line. They point to the experience and the veterans that they've signed, the fact that the only young player, quote-unquote, that they're relying on is John Michael Schmitz, and he's at center. The way I had it, their 6 top guys in some combination this summer were always together. And that was since Greg Van Roten signed a week into camp. When John Michael Schmitz was out, Van Roten took snaps at center, and Aaron Stinney came in at guard with Runyon. And then when Runyon went out, Stinney stepped into his spot at left guard, and Van Roten went back to right guard, and then John Michael Schmitz went to center. So this offensive line feels like it's a little bit of a misnomer to say that they haven't been playing with their unit. They've been playing with their 6 top guys this summer, and now it's time to get their 5 top guys in the rotation and go here. Now we're sitting about a week and a half away from seeing the Minnesota Vikings on September 8th here at MetLife Stadium. The other big story yesterday, or at least a story through us, it wasn't a story if you follow my coverage because I knew Tommy DeVito was making the 53-man roster. It can be debated all you want, But Tommy DeVito forces the Giants to keep 3 quarterbacks, and I think there's some nuance to this. Now, I know there are a lot of fans who look at Tommy DeVito, the player, and say, we can get a more talented quarterback. I had 3 people in the Giants organization within the last week tell me, don't make it seem like Tommy DeVito is not talented. He does have talent. He has arm talent that I think people don't appreciate. He's not going to load up the bazooka and fire it down the field 65 yards. But having to throw from the outer hash to the opposite side of the field, Tommy DeVito can do that. But this isn't about Tommy DeVito's skill set, so to speak, and where it fits with the Giants moving forward. This is about Tommy DeVito's fit in this offense with this coaching staff where a quarterback 3 needs to be. They need to be comfortable that on a short notice, if somehow Daniel Jones and or Drew Lock can't go, that they could turn to Tommy DeVito and give him the keys and say, we can get to the end of this game and maybe a couple down the road and win games, because this team cannot afford to just punt games. And that is the key here with Tommy DeVito and why he's here. He's in his second year. He's an undrafted rookie. Yes, he has the off-the-field story, and a lot of you don't like the attention that he got last year. And, I heard a lot from people saying he took advantage of his 15 minutes of fame, but it's over. He has value in his organization that goes beyond where you think Tommy DeVito is going to be at a quarterback if you rank the top quarterbacks in the NFL. And I got into this on social media, but I might as well mention it here. This idea that, the Giants have the worst ranked quarterback room in the league. Who cares? What matters to the Giants and needs to matter is that they have the right combination, the right pieces that fit together for their quarterback room to win games. Daniel Jones is the starter. If Daniel Jones gets hurt and they go to Drew Lock, they've got to get Drew Lock ready to play. They can't worry about whether Drew Lock is the 32nd ranked quarterback in this league. And that goes for Tommy DeVito as well. Now, a wrinkle here, and I think it's important to note about DeVito being on the 53-man roster, is that when the owners took the recommendation from the competition committee back at the owners' meetings in March and voted through the new emergency QB rule, which was a quarterback could be on the practice squad, get elevated for game day, and then not count against the active players that day and be the emergency third quarterback. Now, the emergency third quarterback is the quarterback that they go to if the first two quarterbacks ahead of them cannot play, that get hurt in the game. For those of you who say that never happens, well, you obviously have not followed the Giants over the last 5 years. But that rule was vetoed by the NFLPA. Now, the NFL or the NFLPA did not make that known public until yesterday, when people started asking about the 3 quarterback rule. So it reverts back to what the rule was last year. And if a third quarterback is on the practice squad, they are not eligible to be the number 3 emergency quarterback on game day. So the way the Giants have their initial 53 constituted now, with Tommy DeVito on the active roster, he will not count against the actives on game day. He will be suited up as the third quarterback, but he will not be able to play unless Daniel Jones and Drew Lock get injured in the game and are unable to return to action. But that's a big difference. You cannot elevate a practice squad quarterback and to have that quarterback available on game day. So as I wrote in my column about DeVito today, it's a big difference a year makes. A year ago on this day, he was in the parking lot, probably right over there in the shadow of MetLife Stadium, taking calls from Bill Belichick and people up at the Patriots trying to convince him to sign with the Pats on the practice squad. And DeVito ultimately signed with the practice squad here, and we know how his season ended up going. He won 3 games. I know some fans are still salty and blame DeVito for costing them a pick that could have gotten them Jaden Daniels or Drake May. Well, it's water under the bridge. You can hate Tommy DeVito all you want, but that's the reality of the situation and where we're at. So those were really the two big moves off of yesterday. I think the Giants 53, as we've thought, is very top heavy. You could compare Andrew Thomas, Brian Burns, Dexter Lawrence to the top players in this league. You could compare Malik Neighbors by the end of this season, I'm sure, to the top wide receivers in this league. But the reality is that they have some good players. Bobby Okereke is a very good player. I mentioned Jermaine Illuminor. I think for the replacement value, he will be a very good player for the Giants. I think Devin Singletary will be a good player for the Giants this year. He won't be as dynamic as Saquon Barkley, but I think Singletary will do a good job on this team. I think there are guys like Kayvon Thibodeau and Tay Banks who need to take that big leap forward this year. The Giants are counting on it. So that's kind of where I sit with this roster. Waiver claims, what I tried explaining to people was that waiver claims were not one and done. So the 5 teams ahead of the Giants, starting with the Carolina Panthers, then Washington, and then New England, could basically put in claims for every player that they wanted. They can make as many claims as they wanted, and they were guaranteed to get them. So between Carolina, who picked 3 corners, and New England, who picked another corner, those are probably 4 corners that the Giants put claims in on, and they did not get them. So the Giants ended up with 1 waiver claim. That's Anthony Johnson, the safety from Green Bay. I think what you'll see, and we're still waiting for official word, but it wouldn't surprise me if Javarius Owens goes on short-term IR today, but you don't have to call it short-term IR. Now that he has been on the active roster for a day, you could just put him on injured reserve, and then in 4 weeks, you can designate him if he's ready, or you can just leave him on IR until he's ready. But Anthony Johnson is not here, so that's where we're at as far as that goes. He's traveling from Green Bay to get here. I'm sure he'll be at practice tomorrow. Today at 5:30, Brian Dable, Joe Shane will have their post-cuts press conference. We'll have reaction on that when hopefully tomorrow I get together with Tyler Dunn, and I'll put out on social media any of my reaction tonight, or I'll have a story up on NorthJersey.com if it warrants a lot of that reaction. Let me go here and go through who the practice squad is for the Giants based on reporting today, but also who we saw out here at practice for the Giants that we were just out there at 2:30. First off, couple number changes. Malik Neighbors still is number 9, so that has not changed. I don't believe he'll be in number 9. That's Graham Gano, but he still has not picked a new number. We'll see what happens on that front. But there are a couple number changes. Theo Johnson is now in 84. That was the number he wore at Penn State. Bryce Ford Wheaton, who is now 88. And Jacob Johnson is back on the practice squad. He is now 89. Jack Stoll, tight end, has signed with the Eagles practice squad. So that's where that is. All right, let me get you some practice squad guys. Turbo Miller, back, friend of the program. We remember Turbo after he signed with the Giants. If you're a faithful follower of All In, you know Turbo. He's here. He's back in 25. It would not surprise me to see him on the active roster sooner rather than later. Let's go through that. I got Turbo. I mentioned Jakob Johnson. I keep saying Jacob, but it's really Jakob. He's here. I think he will be an elevation early on and then be on the active roster. Fullback in this running game will be very interesting to see how they deploy. Alex Johnson, undrafted rookie from UCLA, opened some eyes this summer. He's a good get back. He's a safety, a new guy, but he's actually been here this summer. Ty Summers, inside linebacker. He's a throwback. He's got one of those Tom Rathman neck rolls. He is here. He signed from the Lions to the Giants practice squad. So he was here for the joint practices this summer, and now he's back. He was out at practice. So that was obviously something that happened. Isaiah Hodgins is back on the practice squad. KJ Cloyd, oh, wait a second. KJ Cloyd just made 3 more tackles out there in the parking lot. He is at practice. He is on the practice squad. Casey Rogers is back. He's a good young developmental prospect. He's from Syracuse. I think there are a lot of fans of Casey Rogers in this building. Jimmy Morrissey back. He was the 3rd center this summer. Always good to have a backup center on the practice squad. We'll see how long they keep Austin Schlottman on the active roster. Raheem Lane is a safety. He was with the Giants. He's recovering from an ACL from last year. So we'll see how much he can do. And Jude McAtaney from Rutgers was a specialist last year, kickoff specialist. He's here in the International Pathway Program. He does not count. He is actually a 17th member of the practice squad because he's an International Pathway player. So he'll be with the Giants for as long as the program lasts, and then we'll see what happens. A couple more guys that have not been reported in my story. You can go to northjersey.com and get that story. Lawrence Cager is back, but he was working on the side with the training staff. Miles Boykin is back. Joshua Miles and Marcellus Johnson, 2 tackles from the summer. And Timon Fox, outside linebacker, he's back with the Giants. So take a breath. I am going to drink some water, as I'm sure there's sweat dripping down all over. But, I wanted to go on today. I wanted to make sure, and I wanted to end you with this story because it came up last week at the Jets. And it was the idea that, how could the Jets training facility look one way, completely different than the Giants? It's all glass. And then you look at the Giants here, and it's the brick behind me, very similar to Lucas Oil Stadium where the Giants won Super Bowl 46. Well, here's a story. If you haven't heard me tell it before or you haven't heard it, when they were building MetLife Stadium, and I know there are groans from everyone listening, MetLife, oh, God. Well, here's the deal. The Giants wanted MetLife to look like Lucas Oil Stadium. They wanted this brick. The Jets wanted MetLife to look like their practice facility, a lot of glass, modern aged. They could not compromise. So MetLife looks like the big air conditioning off of Route 3 and 17. That's just the way it is. But the reality is that it could have looked like this, or it could have looked like the Jets facility. Instead, they couldn't compromise. So the Giants have their facility looking like what they hoped the stadium would look like. The Jets have their practice facility, what they hoped the stadium would look like. Neither one had a roof, but they do now on their practice facilities. But that's why MetLife looks like MetLife. So hopefully I gave you a lot of information. Anything that I missed that you want me to talk about in the next show, hit me up on social media, art_Stapleton. Leave it in the comments on YouTube. But again, appreciate you all. I'm glad. We're going to try to make this work as much as we can on video. So keep checking, keep subscribing, and keep listening all in. We're going into year 4. We've got a live show coming up, and it's going to be at the Fan Fest. Not finalized yet, but we're going to have it. We've already started working on some guests. I think you're going to like at least one of them, who has given me a loose commitment that he will be coming on the show. I'll get you more details as soon as we get them confirmed. But next Friday, the week after Labor Day, 2 days before the season opens, at the Fan Fest at MetLife Stadium, expect to see all in there, and our crew, Paul Wood, and everybody else will be there doing our show the way we did at the draft party the last 2 years. So thanks for listening. We appreciate you being all in, and I'll be back tomorrow, hopefully, with Ty Dunn of Go Long to talk about his takeout series on Joe Shane and the New York Giants. Appreciate you listening and watching, and keep checking out all of our coverage, our all-in coverage, on NorthJersey.com and in the print editions of the Record.